a meeting of the Plan Commission on Monday, April 24th at 6:30 PM in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom and also can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with Wisconsin Statute Sections 19.83 and 19.84 in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for discussion and action. Roll call shows all plan commissioners present except for Trustee Baum, who is joining us via WebEx tonight. Next item on the agenda is public input and public appearance. If there's anyone in our audience or anyone else joining us via WebEx that would like to participate in public input or public appearance, you're welcome to do so at this time. I would ask if you're in our audience to come to the podium and state your name and your address for the record. And if you are joining us via WebEx and would like to participate in public input or public appearance, just make yourself known so that the moderator can be aware of it and key you in at the time for your turn. So if there is anyone in our audience or joining us via WebEx that would like to join us for public input, public appearance, you're welcome to do so. Is there anyone that wishes to do so?
Alrighty. I didn't get zapped. Okay, Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane. Tonight, I'm going to be focusing on the neighborhood meetings, and as part of what you're discussing later on in the implementation plan of the 2050 plan, of which I hope you still have my notes from last month. So tonight I'm going to share with you some secret sauce in regards to conducting community-based planning sessions. The problem with planning processes is that they are frequently led by experts and the people who then manage the process. And what happens with this is it creates a perception that the outcome is preordained. No matter what the input is from the community, there's always a doubt that it's being taken seriously. It just works that way. The difference in what I have laid out in the first paragraph are two things. One is that you have an independent entity actually leading the process with all community parties as participants only. And then the most important thing is that the community votes on the solutions, which are then accepted into the plan. That did not happen with the 2050 plan. It was led by experts and the planning department, and there was no actual vote or acceptance of a vote. And I'm just suggesting, based on my experience, having done this previously, that this is an excellent way to get an awful lot of people engaged in a process and also trusting the process. That seems to be an issue with government in general these days, is people just don't trust it at all. And as an example, there were some things that were made by the community, comments that did not actually make it into the 2050 plan that are on those maps. The second part of the handout describes three kinds of planning: strategic planning, land use planning, and then master planning. And I maintain that the neighborhood meetings and the village center are what would be referred to as master planning. The other thing that is in here is an example of Reston, Virginia, which is an excellent history of how to create places by using placemaking techniques. And you can go to that article if you like. And also there's something about Roger Scruton, who talks about the importance of beauty and architecture reflecting the values of a community. So that is in there as well. And then the last two things, and then I'll be done, are the excerpts of the Muni Code about who you are as a plan commission and also your state statutes, and gives you the purpose of what planning is. It's broader than just land use, and that's what it says in the state statutes also. And then one final thing, it's great that we're going to hear tonight the last of the hideous monoliths is being built. It's on the docket for tonight, and there won't be any more big, nasty, huge warehouses after that one, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance? Anyone else for citizen input or public appearance? Is there anyone joining us via WebEx that would like to join us for citizen input or public appearance? All right, then with that, we can go on to the next item, which would be the approval of minutes from the April 10th, 2023 Plan Commission meeting.
I'll move approval.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the approval of minutes? No discussion? All those in favor then, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. That then takes us to new business. Before we start with new business item A, I have been asked to announce that we will not be able to get to new business item E tonight. Jeff had some issues in preparation and has asked that it be postponed to our next Plan Commission meeting. He apologizes for that. But due to some limitations and some other items that he had to prioritize, we will not be able to go through that discussion on item E. But I would like a motion from the Plan Commission to postpone that and include it in our next agenda at the May 8th Plan Commission meeting.
I move postponement until the May 8th meeting.
Second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. That takes us to new business. Item A, starting with Michael Doran for U.S. Cellular, agent for Faith Lutheran Church, property owner located at West 172 North 11183 Division Road. This is a conditional use permit and site plan review for a 190-foot monopole tower and wireless communication facility. It's a telecommunication facility. And this is a continuance from the April 10th Plan Commission meeting where it was asked to be postponed to this meeting. So the way that it would then be picked up is in discussion. We had a public hearing and then there was I think there was a motion brought forward by the Plan Commissioners and then it was asked to be postponed. So with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzloff, to kind of catch us up as to where we are at today and bring us any new items of interest that are in regards to new business item A. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. President. A quick refresher, the proposal includes a 190-foot monopole with a total of 194 feet with a 4-foot lightning rod, a fall zone that has been revised as a consequence of discussion at the April 10th meeting and a document that we received subsequent to that indicating that the fall zone has been redesigned to essentially be no greater than 45% of the tower height, which would put it under 85 feet, which again, as we discussed, was less than the nearest property setback to the west. So that satisfies or addresses one of the concerns that was raised by staff. The tower would include a space for 3 additional mobile services, gray metal finish, the equipment compound at the base, a 75 by 75 lease area with a 10-foot utility and a 30-foot access easement, 10 feet to Mequon Road, 30 feet easement out to Division Road. Within that lease area, a 40 by 40-foot equipment compound with a 6-foot chain link security fence topped with a 3-barb wire for a total of 7 feet height on the fence with privacy slats and locking gates. Again, the site location on the site in the southwest corner of the church property. setback about 95 feet from the west property line, 195 feet to the south property line, and over 500 feet from the north from Mequon Road and west of Division Road. The landscape plan that was included shows some arborvitae around the perimeter of the fence enclosure, and again, privacy slats in the cyclone fence itself. At the April 10th meeting, the discussion and action was postponed to tonight, pending additional information. The motion that was made was sort of a 3-4-parter that was specifically asking for some information addressing specific topics that include the status of the Germantown dispatch service and equipment. In discussions with the police chief, there are no changes proposed to the village dispatch service or the equipment on the towers. With regard to Washington County and their equipment on the taller tower, an agent for the communication division of the Washington County Sheriff's Department has indicated that there is a trunk upgrade project that will begin soon. However, this particular location at the police department, they're not expecting to be any changes any sooner than 2 years, if at all. That process will take that long, and while it may result in the removal or changing of some equipment on the tower, it's too early to predict that sort of thing. And finally, with regard to the ability to alter the location of the existing Washington County antenna on the tower, the consultant for the county indicated that there's really no way of telling without doing some significant analysis, given the relationship to other equipment and other towers that are part of the system. So that would be something that would need to be done in order to determine even if the equipment, particularly the one whip antenna that we were discussing, could be moved up or down to avoid or make space, if you will, for the new mobile service. The final item that was asked concerns obtaining expert opinion or assistance in the review of the validity of the service area maps. You may recall that on April 10th, we got into a lengthy discussion about the search ring that was the information that was included in the original application and it being revised and additional information being handed out the night of April 10th. Staff has reached out to a private consultant that works exclusively for the public sector in wireless communication issues. Cityscape Consultants, they happen to have a gentleman on their staff that in fact lives in Thiensville, although the company itself is based out of Florida. We are discussing a service agreement that's pending. We're waiting to get something from them, but in the meantime, we did get some preliminary information based on their review of some of the information in the application. And one of those responses essentially confirms the idea that the half-mile search ring is closer to reality for the way things are in terms of infrastructure development for wireless communication. Even though the village tower is only 0.11 miles, roughly less than 600 feet away outside of the half-mile search ring, but it is within what US Cellular indicated in the information that was handed out as a potential target area for a new tower that could provide an area for service between 150 and 195 feet. And that may be a viable engineering-wise alternative. So the consultant is indicating that it may be worth looking into further. With regard to the whip antenna, the comment was that would likely need to be moved to accommodate an additional mobile service carrier. And that was something that was discussed at the last meeting as well. So that process is pending. Even though we are outside of the 10-day review period, but within the 90-day application period, the consultant has indicated their willingness to provide us a report based on their review and verification of the US Cellular engineers' conclusions in the information that's been submitted, and evaluate the search ring, determining or answering the question, is it a credible search ring for the for the area. And so with that, we'll continue discussing that with the consultant and see where that leads us. And it's something we should discuss this evening as well. With regard to that 90-day application period, as we discussed, that expires on May 16th. The village board would need to make a decision on the conditional use permit application by that time. Otherwise, pursuant to Wisconsin statute 660404, the application would be presumed to be approved, and no further action could be taken by the village. Since April 10th, a couple of things have happened. The US Cellular application has been amended or supplemented. Again, we received some information concerning the fall zone. I mentioned earlier, we received that last week, a new engineering certification that the tower is or will be designed with smaller fall zone capabilities, less than 45% of the 190-foot tower height. The information we received on April 10th, the revised co-location search ring information, and also the revised co-location sworn statement that were included in that packet. Hard copies of those documents were left on your desk this evening, along with a series of slides that the applicant had submitted for your further consideration. The US Cellular has offered to extend the application period an additional 45 days from May 16th to June 30th. Subject to some conditions. One, that the Village of Germantown accept the revised half-mile search ring analysis that was submitted on April 10th and recognize it as the search area as part of the original application. That instead of the original 1 mile information that had been provided. The second condition, that the Village of Germantown accept the corrected co-location statement submitted on April 10th and recognize that as the official co-location statement. And finally, that action by the Plan Commission tonight be tabled and rescheduled to May 8th to allow the Village of Germantown more time to review the application with respect to the revised half-mile search ring and co-location statement, to allow the village more time to provide US Cellular more detailed information on the village's 190-foot tower. And finally, to allow US Cellular more time to perform a cursory review of the Village of Germantown Tower as a co-location alternative. With that, staff has just a few questions that are sort of outstanding, and you may have some as well, and we can discuss those as we go forward. Specifically, the question, does submitting the revised search ring and engineer's co-location statement constitute a new application that warrants resetting the 90-day application period? In effect, by offering the additional 45 days, that gives us additional time to review the application. And so that's a question that we need to discuss and make a decision on as well. If the Village of Germantown hires an independent wireless consultant, who pays the cost to evaluate the Village of Germantown Tower as a possible co-location site? At this point, US Cellular is saying not them, because the tower is outside of their half-mile search ring. Another question, if or is the US Cellular's offer to do a cursory review of the Germantown Tower as a co-location site, is it sufficient to prove that it is a viable site, or is more engineering analysis going to be required after that? And finally, if so, will the US Cellular co-locate on the Village of Germantown Tower if it's found to be a viable site, despite being outside of the half-mile search ring? So with that, I do have additional slides from last month's presentation we can go through for clarification if necessary, but at this point, we can pick up where we left off in terms of the discussion. And I don't know if anybody has any questions of me at this point.
Commissioners? Mr. Williams?
Jeff, as it relates to question number 2 regarding hiring the wireless consultant. So in our code 1756, section 6, it gives the village, the language in our code says the village may employ the services of a consulting expert. The expense will be compensated to the village by the applicant as an admin cost of processing the application. And in the state statute, it just says that we are not allowed to pass on travel expenses of that consultant to the applicant. We would have to cover the travel expenses. So I'm just curious as to what or how USC has come to the conclusion that it's not, that they would not be responsible for the cost.
Yeah, that's probably a good question for either Mike or Sean. But at this point, I would point out that the village attorney, Brian Sadak, is listening in to tonight's meeting, and it was one of the questions that had been posed to him. I don't know, Brian, if you want to jump in at this point?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I think that kind of that discrepancy is kind of one of the unknowns in the statute. Certainly, my interpretation and reading of that would suggest that since the legislature indicated that we could not pass on the cost for travel expenses, that the legislature certainly seems to contemplate that we could charge other similar costs as part of that. There may be some issues. There's a provision in the statute that does talk about the kind of cap on the fee that we can impose on these types of things, which in this case would be $3,000. It probably is a reasonable interpretation of the statute that $3,000 cap would be designed to include any costs of an engineer that was going to review the application materials and provide an opinion. Would be kind of my gut read of the statute.
Other questions? Kuliszewski.
Looking at number 4, I guess along the same lines, if a site is outside that search ring, just curious what the state of Wisconsin, I'm sure this has been litigated. And if it has been litigated, what's been determined? If you're outside that boundary, it's something that we can ask them to look at, or is it hardwired? No, we cannot.
Well, at this point, US Cellular has offered to do a cursory review of the village tower, presumably even though it's outside of the half-mile search ring. Again, my question is that at the conclusion of that cursory review, is that enough information to determine whether it is or isn't viable? And if it is found to be viable, does that mean US Cellular would co-locate on that? And that's a question that I would have of you folks. Yes.
Apologize.
Yeah, come on up.
No.
I don't.
As Jeff stated, we have offered to do a more in-depth cursory review, other than the visual inspection of us looking at it, and really probably not having a good feeling on it. To date, last 2 weeks ago when we were here, we requested, I think the next day we sent an email requesting some information on the tower. Its most recent structural analysis, the tower design drawings, including foundations, and the NEPA that was done on the site. And to date, we haven't received anything. So just to be honest, I'm not comfortable talking too much about it. And we are still willing to do a cursory review on that. But as far as making any sort of judgment of whether that tower would work or would not work, I'm not comfortable making any statements right now.
Okay, I got a question. Could you stay up there? I want to go back to that search ring and its process of how it's determined. How how do you come about that first location of the search ring is in this area and we draw that circle from there? How is that determined? Is it, and I know that you said it was a desktop study, so it'd be looked at from maps, but is it looked at in a logistic way for how it's situated from away from the towers? And this is the most central location from other towers to give it the coverage? Or is it just a dartboard and we throw the dart and
No.
here's where it is?
The RF engineering team from the carrier, in this situation, US Cellular,
Mhm.
recognizes a need.
Mhm.
They then design the most ideal location based on that need, not knowing where that is, but on a map, and they place it. This would be the ideal location.
Based on allowing the best coverage from the
That would
surrounding
ma-
towers?
That would maximize the coverage of the area and also fit into the network the best of the existing towers that are out there. So their existing network, how would this supplement and add to that best way? So they say, this pinpoint right here would be the best. Here's the ring. Somewhere in this ring, we should be able to make this work. Okay, varying depending on heights, topography, et cetera. As stated, in the ordinance, in the packet that we supplied with the slides, that every location within a ring doesn't necessarily work.
Right?
I mean, there are locations that don't work for various reasons, some of them being zoning. A lot of that search ring was residential. We weren't going to try to go residential.
The pinpoint is in residential.
The pinpoint is, but the RF engineer does not know that at that point. That's why they hand it to us to go out and evaluate.
I have trouble with that part of it
Why do you have trouble with
because in today's world with Google Maps and satellite imaging and just looking at this, you
Mhm.
can tell this is a subdivision. You
But he
know
doesn't
it
know.
is.
There are locations in some jurisdictions that allow towers in residential. This is not one of them. That's okay. There's nothing wrong. But there are some, the RF engineer isn't paid to go find zoning. That's what we get hired to do. They are designers. They are the one that create and try to perfect a network to serve their customers. Their job has nothing to do with whether something is residential, commercial, industrial. So yeah.
And are they neutral to the provider when they're choosing it, or this is the provider choosing it?
This is the provider choosing. This is a US Cellular RF engineer is the one that gave us those coordinates with the half-mile search ring. I've had some search rings that the center is in the middle of a lake. I've had one in Wisconsin up near DeSoto where it's in the Mississippi River. They are looking at a location that's ideal. That doesn't mean it has to go there. That's
No,
just
I
the ideal
understand.
location. And then they make the ring around it.
Based on its proximity of a half a mile or a mile, couldn't it then also be placed in consideration of where another surrounding tower might be and you just move it a quarter of a mile off so that it doesn't include that tower? Isn't that possibility could also be done within this choice? Because it would still work within that half mile range. And if you're plus or minus a quarter mile and you're saying, well, if I move it a quarter mile this way, then I don't have to worry about this tower or co-locating because now it's outside of my half mile ring.
And honestly, I'm struggling to answer this question without offending the board. Could that happen? Yes, it could. Does it happen? I can't answer that.
Okay.
We don't do that. We are an ethical company. We are given a ring.
It's
and we
not
do it.
ethics to me.
So
It's
the
just
fact
an
is,
advantage.
the fact is, let me finish, please. The fact
Mhm.
is, very close to here in Economowalk, we are co-locating on an existing structure that we've had to fight to get on, trying not to build a tower. So the implication or suggestion that there might be something nefarious going on here, I'm sorry, but that is quite offensive to me personally. I take, and I'm sure to US Cellular as well. This is the ring. You have the state statutes in front of you. I know that in a perfect world, if that tower would work, fantastic. But again, I can't say whether it would work.
Jake's a homophobic.
I don't even have the information to do that cursory review that was requested. We just don't have it. So that's why I am not comfortable stating whether it will or will not work. Once we're provided that information, I would be more than glad to do a cursory review on that tower, get our RF engineer involved to do a cursory review, but until we know what's on that tower, I can't even tell him what Brad Center to run his projections at.
And we're trying to pull that information together.
Okay.
It's not a source of information that we have here at the Village Hall.
And,
Would
and
the other person want it as well? Who we're hiring?
Presumably, yes.
And going back to, adjusting a search ring to stay away from a tower. When we, GSS, did our initial review, as I told you, this was a desktop review. So the only thing on Google Earth that we could see on a quick, we weren't paid a ton of money to do this. It was a cursory evaluation initially for a feasibility. We had to use the ASR layer on that. This tower would have been registered with the ASR. Doesn't mean you have to, you do have to file FAA typically, but it's a really easy process. If that would have been filed in ASR, we would have noticed it and it would have been noted on that site feasibility summary. Because it wasn't registered, it didn't show up. So we did not know about the tower until we got released on the site and we sent site acquisition out to look at it. So I'm not saying it would have been a viable candidate right up front, but we would have noted it and told you a sailor about it. So
I don't have a problem with the site chosen. I have a little bit of obviously a problem with how the practice of it comes about when it seems where they choose to place that dot. And I get it. You're dealing with engineers and they're saying that the perfect placement is here and it may not be where you want it to be. And then they have to have a ring to do that. It just seems, that if you would see where it's actually ending up, you would look for it to be in more of a place that would have the space that would allow it one way or another within your search ring. Rather than just saying it's in this backyard and that's the best place. So now look at half a mile from that perfect area when you know it can be plus or minus about a mile. What I
Sir,
don't want to
sir, you-
see, and
sir-
what I don't, let me finish first and then you can go. What I don't want to see is two towers that are so close to one another. And I don't begrudge the church and its possible revenue stream from that rental. And I understand it and I know how churches are struggling for revenue nowadays, especially in today's economy, and how some of those contributions are being cut back because people need to live and are making those types of choices. So it's not that. It's just that putting two towers within a mile of one another seems to be, to me, more of a waste of cost when you could co-locate or find a possibility of co-locating one that is nearby. And it has nothing to do with it being on our property. I don't care. It's just more aesthetics.
I can appreciate that statement, but I do need to correct. You keep saying that plus or minus a mile or an extra half mile or a quarter mile. The ring is the ring. It is what it is.
Mhm.
That is the search area. It's not plus or minus beyond. So there might be plus or minus. One of our camps we did look at was outside the ring and it was immediately rejected by US Cellular. We tried to bring that, as a potential option. But please read through the packet, I say.
Mhm.
The bottom line is we meet every regulation of the Wisconsin state statute. We are willing to abide by the conditions that Jeff has suggested in the approval, except for two that I've noted in that packet. I believe that is the right decision. That's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that it's what you guys feel. I do believe that is the best step. In regards to Cityscape, you have to remember that the application we've made is regarding that half mile search ring. Anything outside of that, the state says that it's irrelevant. So anything that they may talk about to that is not going to be what we would call substantial evidence for a denial. I'm just being blunt with it.
Mhm.
Well, I'm gonna interrupt you right there and sir, just to say that I think you're wrong on that point. I think the statute defines search ring to be not some random circle that is drawn on a map that you can then say, well, we look on the inside of this circle, but not on the other side of that circle. Search ring by statute just means a shape that's drawn on the map to indicate a general area within which mobile service structure should be located to meet the RF engineering requirements, take into account other factors, including topography and demographics of the service area. I don't believe that the statute contemplates that just because you've drawn a line on a map, that a site that is just outside of that line, that is at effectively the same elevation, is excluded from your quote unquote search ring in that case. And I think that that may be one of the things that Cityscape may be called to look at and to review is this something that otherwise works in light of the search ring that's been identified? There's nothing in the statute that says that it's a random circle that's put on a map or a triangle that's put on a map or anything like that. It's just here's the area that we're looking, and we have to take into account all of these other factors when we're looking at a site that we're looking at. And so for you to say that this is not substantial evidence that maybe applies here, I think is absolutely incorrect. I think it's somewhat specious for you to suggest that we don't need to even look at this other tower because it's outside of that ring. I think that you absolutely do. I think that it's also a little bit disingenuous for you to say that, well, we need to get the information from the village, and the village hasn't provided it, and so it's hard to say. I think that you do these types of analysis without having all of the details that you've asked from the village on towers all the time. It's you looking to just get an approval of a particular tower because that's what you've been asked to do.
I respectfully disagree with you that the definition does define what a search ring is. And then number 6, in Wisconsin 660404, new construction 6, if an application is to construct a new mobile service support structure, which is what we're requesting, an explanation as to why the applicant chose the proposed location and why the applicant did not choose co-location, including a sworn statement from the individual who has responsibility over the placement of the mobile service tower support structure, attesting that co-location within the applicant's search ring. If it's not defined by that, that is what it's saying, is show us the ring and then do all your due diligence within the search area that you are identifying. And that's exactly what we've done.
Right, but you're saying that, well, it says a ring, so it needs to be a circle. That's not the definition of what search ring means when you look at the actual definition of the term. You have to look at the defined term. Defined term does not say circle. It says the shape that's drawn on the map to identify potential locations.
Which could be affected by topography or surrounding buildings. Okay.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question of Sean? On the half-mile radius information that you handed out on April 10th, on the top of that, on the first page, and I think all of the subsequent pages, it indicates the search area radius is 0.5 miles, and then it says 150 to 195 AGL. Now, when you talk about that the search ring radius of a half mile, that's the ideal area within which a tower should be located. What does the 150 to 195 mean?
I think that's the height.
That is the elevation of the rad center in feet above ground level, AGL.
Does that mean it could be anywhere between 150 and 195 to be an ideal?
Depending on topography, depending on location, depending on surrounding structures, depending on just how this propagates.
So the engineer who's determined that this half mile and this particular location is the ideal center and half mile area around it within which the tower should go to provide the service. Does that mean that the rad center could be anywhere between 150 and 195? Or does
No,
it require further detailed analysis?
It's depending on where the tower is placed. So this being on the north end of the ring, it pushed the higher elevation. Does that make sense? Because we were further away from that ideal location. If we were in that ideal location, again, it's an ARF engineer putting on the map running a quick propagation to see this, he feels this with this sector orientation would provide the best coverage. We don't always get perfection though. If we would have had to move, say, 3/8 of a mile to the west, if the ground elevation had increased, and even though we were further away, or the equivalent basically of this distance from the center, but if elevation of the ground was different, there's a possibility that that wouldn't have need 190 there. We may only need 170 there. But if we need 190 there, I can almost guarantee you we're going to need that over there from an RF perspective. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying that this is Sean's opinion. It's not the factual from RF engineer, and we would, once we can figure out what rad center is possible on that tower, we will have them run propagations and see if that is a possibility. But
Okay, so it's not a function of the closer you are to the center of the half mile, the lower you can go.
sometimes if the elevations are consistent and if there's nothing else, I've done sites in Madison where because of buildings, we weren't able to go with that ideal structure because a building blocked the signal. Or there might be something that's blocking the signal. I've done sites in rural Wisconsin. I've worked on almost 70+ sites in the last year here in Wisconsin. That because of the beautiful terrain, the God-given terrain that Wisconsin has, especially north of Madison, all the way up towards Centerville and other areas way up north, sometimes it's the natural beauty of a cliff that blocks the coverage because RF travels in a straight line. So if you have a mountain or a hill or whatever you want to call it, and that signal hits that hill, it's not going through it and it doesn't go over it, it stops. So it shadows on the other side. So positioning of that sometimes is very important. A lot of times they want to be up on a bluff. Sometimes being up on a bluff, they're too tall though, and they overshoot their targeted area. There are so many factors that go into RF engineering. I am not an RF engineer. I've only been in the industry a while, so I have a good understanding of it. But for me to sit here and try and tell you every little detail that goes into it, I am not an RF engineer. I don't work with the software that they utilize. I don't know what the capacity is on the other sites. That's personal information or proprietary information that US Cellular has and that they maintain and will maintain. So I have to trust when someone hands me a ring, this is what they need.
And I understand you need more detail on the Village of Germantown Tower to determine its viability. But I still think you could end a lot of time and resource being spent if you were able to answer the question, if it is deemed to be viable, would you co-locate on the tower?
He's not going to put that out until he knows what he's asking for. That he's already said.
I will answer it this way. Because there are so many unknowns. If I were to answer that question and said, yep, we'll co-locate on that, if I said that, and then the tower deems to work, which it might, I'm not saying it wouldn't. That doesn't mean that the village might not come back and want to rent that is not financially feasible. There are just so many, I'm not saying you would, I'm just saying there are so many different factors that I'm not going to hamstring US Cellular by making this commitment for them that we're there. Let us evaluate the site. Let's talk about these things. But we need that information first and foremost, because until then, I'm just guessing. And I already gave you 2 weeks ago my best guess on this. I have no more additional information, so I really can't add any more to it. I just, I wish I could. I really wish I could, but I can't.
Village Attorney, do you have any opinion on the earlier question from Planner Retzloff in regards to does submitting revised search ring and engineering co-location statement constitute a new application that warrants resetting the 90-day application period?
That one is really a gray area, I think. Certainly, the search ring, the area that you're looking is contemplated by the statute to be part of the initial application. Submitting a revised one certainly to me would suggest that you've amended the application in a nature that would reset that clock. But it's not 100% clear. As the board knows, or I should say the commission knows, we get amended things before us all the time as we're vetting proposals. And so it's hard for me to say, with any certainty, because the statute doesn't appear to contemplate it one way or the other in terms of how that's addressed. I think if we're looking for additional time, I think the way that you do that is to take the folks up on their proposal to extend the time frame for 45 days, and trust that that's going to give both sides the time that they're going to need to vet the various issues that they need to vet.
It does work within the schedule of the Plan Commission and the Village Board for approval within a day. Because the Village Board would have it before it on May 15th and the deadline is 16th?
Yes, but if we did take advantage of the offer for a 45-day extension, that puts the deadline to June 30th.
Yeah, I
So
don't,
that would allow basically one additional monthly cycle of Plan Commission and board meetings.
and would that only be determined based on the other firm's requirement of needing additional time to go through that information? Or would it just be determined based on us having to review and resolve the information as it's been provided to us?
Well, I asked the question of the consultant, and they seem to think that they would be able to turn around a report for us within the additional 45-day period,
Okay.
but probably not in time to meet current May 16th expiration of the 90-day cycle.
Interesting. Okay. Commissioners? You have two choices. One is to move forward based on the information as it's been provided to you and feel that it's sufficient to go through the approval, or to look at going down the path of the consultant and taking that information and using it to determine your decision at a later date.
I think we should move to use the consultant.
Okay, so
And take the time we need to do this.
so your motion then would be to either table or postpone to the next Plan Commission meeting on May 8th?
Yes, if that's appropriate with what you're expecting from your consultant. Does that mean it definitely is the 8th, which is fine? But
think
I
that
don't
there
think we'd
would
be
be-
ready, would we?
Information that could be provided, but if I understand Jeff correctly, the consultant is saying he would need to go into that 45-day extension.
Yeah, but I guess I would ask to leave it open in case we do need or are able to come back on the 8th and bring it up for further discussion.
So we would move to accept the extension, and you would schedule appropriately for what meeting it would come before us,
I
right?
think Jeff's just asking for the delay until the 8th, and at that
Okay.
time we could determine if the extension would be
And that's
needed.
fine with me.
So I
So
guess I would ask Sean and Mike, the 45-day offer is still open? Absolutely.
It is still open. I do have to respond to something real quick. Is it regarding the search ring? There was no search ring submitted in the original application because it wasn't a requirement of either the CUP nor the wireless. There was nothing in that said we need to see the search ring. What you saw were some circles that were drawn on there in relationship to some requirements that you did have in there about towers within a certain distance. Some we provided, some we didn't, that we couldn't provide. One was that we were to provide all the towers within 5 miles of the village border, which we talked with Jeff and explained to him that that would not be feasible. So the search ring that was supplied 2 weeks ago is the only search ring that was ever submitted to you guys. So this isn't a revision. Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear.
That's not true. I mean,
That's not true at all. You're picking and choosing which part of the statute you want to follow.
Show
The
me the
statute clearly says that the application shall be in writing and shall contain all of the following, including sub 6. So you're telling me that you're not going to follow the statute here, but you're going to follow it in cases where it's beneficial to you?
I have the statute in front of me. Needs to be provided.
you did provide information in your application that refers to the 1 mile search ring.
Was there a visual? And as we said, it was erroneous. There was erroneous information in there. Mike was filing many applications. Just like erroneous things happen all the time. Okay? I'll use the submission for tonight's docket that was sent out. There was an updated where the search ring was inserted into that, but nowhere was there the revised co-location statement that was submitted by us on the 10th was not included, but the one that was incorrectly on our part submitted was in there twice. We could have looked at that as something sloppy or no. I think it was just someone was busy and just missed, and that's okay, and I'm okay with that. But
I'm not
sometimes-
applying for the permit.
I'm not.
You are.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that sometimes mistakes happen. They put the wrong one, but you were given no visual representation of what that mile ring was, were you?
No,
Were you given a map with something drawn out?
no,
that showed-
what I was given was a sworn statement by an engineer saying that he didn't find anything within 1 mile, the 1 mile search ring, except for those 2 towers in the police department station. And it said the taller tower was 160 feet tall.
Like I said, there were errors.
There were errors.
So
So
once I noticed that there was no search ring submitted, I submitted the search ring so that we could give the measurement of what it is. To answer the question about would US Sailor be willing to extend? There were 3 conditions that we wanted to see. Obviously, one of them was not going to happen because we had much discussions tonight. I think they would, as long as it is understood that the search ring that was provided 2 weeks ago is the search ring. It's what it always has been. It's dated 2022. Nothing's changed from the time that is. And I can give you a timeline on that, documented timeline on that. And the fact that, yes, we submitted an erroneous co-location statement that stated 1 mile instead of half a mile. And that was corrected as well once I realized that error had been made and brought that in. That's all we ask. If that can be, then I think we could deal with 45 days.
it seems like a reasonable approach. I mean, the alternative is for the village, one alternative is for the village to deny your application and put you in a position of either taking us to court or resubmitting the application with all the correct up-to-date information and resetting the clock to 90 days. So rather than do that, split the difference, 45, and you submit and we accept the revised information that would ultimately be in a new application to address the issues at hand.
That's what I'm
Seems
a-
reasonable. to
That's
me.
what I'm asking is the ring and the revised co-location statement are accepted? If those 2 things are there, then we have no problems with additional 45 days. That gives you guys more time to review and look at that. There's more time for us to, for you to provide us the information we need so that we can do our cursory review. I think it's a valid, I don't want to rush this board into a decision. So, and nor does US Sailor. So we're willing, but the 1 mile, half mile discussion, we need to get rid of that distraction of this is what the search ring was. And from March of 2022, the area that we evaluated was that half mile ring. That was the search ring. Now, when an application was put in 11 months later, there were some erroneous mistakes in. We admit that. We're trying to, and we once recognized, I immediately corrected it in good faith. It wasn't to try to hide anything or anything. I wanted the most correct and accurate information to you guys so that the board could make its best decision. If, 45 days additional will help that. And as long as we can kind of have that erroneous distraction out the window so that it can be more focused on what we need to talk about, I'm all for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Because we talked about the search ring,
Sure.
I'm the one who put that search ring in the packet. And just for a little background, I've done that particular circle on a map 500, 700 times. Forgetting that I'm in Wisconsin, where it's very important that to utilize that other search ring that I actually did drive, and that I actually did look at. So it was a mistake. It wasn't intended to be, it's just that I've done it so often to let the jurisdictions know, hey, I've looked in this area and this is what I found and this is what I know. So I just want to really, to your point about, switching, it's not, it was a bad move, a bad mistake on my part. And I, trust me, he's the boss and I had to pay, and I had to answer for that. So, and then one other point I wanted to make is to caution about the aesthetic, the comment you made about aesthetics. We can't really look at that aesthetically, just via the state statute. So.
I didn't know what comment that was.
But when I said that,
yeah.
it wasn't, I was only looking at the possibility of two towers that are so close together when there's a possibility of co-locating, more for the
Right.
aesthetic value.
Yeah.
Oh, I did make that comment.
I mean, our general underlying theme in our own code, albeit preempted by, in most part by the state statute, is to try and avoid the proliferation of towers to the extent that we can.
I get
And that's
it.
not an aesthetic feature, is it?
Well, the word. We'll just, I'll leave it at that. All right, thanks.
All right, we're back to the motion. Mr. Shadid, you said that you were looking to postpone or table? I think
Well,
you
I
just-
use it in my documentation on the screen because that's what was in the written offer from Mr. Hempstead in the email request that it be tabled. I don't know if that really matters at this point, if we're
It's up to the
moving.
motion maker. One would warrant discussion and tabling would warrant no discussion.
Well, let's table it until.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion- Motion made and seconded. There's no discussion on tabling. Oh,
One discussion.
No,
Oh,
can't do it.
Can't discuss.
can't do it.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
One opposed? Motion carries. Gentlemen, thank you again for coming tonight and for the information that you've shared with us. We appreciate it. Next item under new business is item B, Pinnacle Engineering Group, agent for ZPG Development LLC and TI Investors of Germantown 6 LLC, property owners located at W210 North 13145 Gateway Crossing, site plan application for 254,851 square foot industrial building, which is designated as Zilber number 7 in the Germantown Gateway Corporate Park. That's on tonight's agenda for action. And to give us some more information and background on this new business item, I'll turn the meeting over again to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Germantown Gateway Corporate Park is located within TID number 8. They were developed concurrently back in 2018. On the screen, the TID boundary is highlighted in blue, and the Germantown Gateway Corporate Park boundary is highlighted in yellow. Building number 7, commonly referred to as Zilber 7, is going to be constructed in the location highlighted in red on the screen, the last available parcel in the Germantown Gateway Corporate Park. I'm gonna click through here. In 2018, we were presented with a concept plan that indicated that approximately 2.1 million square feet of industrial space would be constructed in 7 buildings. To date, 6 buildings have been approved or are under construction or completed, with a total of 1.72 million square feet. Building number 7, proposed at 254,851 square feet, with a potential expansion of an additional 100,000 square feet, would essentially put us up to that almost 2.1 million square foot figure. It would probably go slightly over if you added in the additional area that was approved as part of the, or available, if you will, as part of the Briggs and Stratton Zilber number 1 building on the north side of that building. So the development of the Gateway Park has developed just as envisioned back just a few short 5 years ago. The to-date boundary, there's another graphic showing the buildings situated within the Gateway Park, Zilber 7 being on the north side adjacent to Rockfield Road. Zilber 7 is again 254,851 square feet with a possible expansion area of 100,000 square feet to the west. It's a single tenant industrial light manufacturing building with 12-foot and 14-foot wide, 32-foot high, clear height painted, insulated precast wall panels with reveals and building articulation. The color scheme is white to a couple shades of gray with a painted blue accent band with stepped elevation around the four-sided type architecture of the building. There are 37 loading bays on the south elevation, and as will discuss shortly, there's a roof plan with the HVAC units currently are unknown at this point. And an issue that would be resolved or addressed as part of the tenant build-out and the zoning permit issued at that particular moment in time. In terms of renderings, a couple of renderings of the building from the northeast corner, basically the Rockfield at Gateway Crossing intersection looking southwesterly across the site. With Zilber 6, 5, and 2 and 3 off in the distance in the background. We do have a landscaping plan that was included in the packet. This plan was based on ultimate build out of the site. It doesn't reflect the smaller building size, but it does show landscaping across the entire frontage on Rockfield Road and Gateway Crossing. A couple of graphics that show landscaping, again, from the intersection, looking across the site on the top. And the characterization was adolescent plantings, and on the bottom at mature growth along that berm that's proposed on the north side. We do have a video. A drive-by of along Rockfield Road.
Does that also represent the rooftop units?
No, I don't know that it can at this point. We don't know the locations of the rooftop units, the quantity or the relative location or size.
Okay.
Give that one last go, and then we'll move on to the elevations. On the screen are the elevations from the packet of materials, the north elevation, the south, the east, and the west. The east elevation, obviously facing Gateway Crossing, and the west elevation, the expansion wall, if you will, on the west side of the building. It could be expanded. In terms of staff comments, again, the rooftop HVAC screening potential is not to be expected to be addressed until the time of a tenant build out. As with previous Zilber buildings, we've left open and included a condition that requires this issue to be addressed at the time zoning permit approval for the tenant build out is submitted. Staff's comment with regard to berming and landscaping. You've heard this all along since probably Zilber 4 discussion. The idea is that along Rockfield Road, we would try to replicate and require the same or similar type amount of berming and landscaping along the Rockfield elevation as was required for the Illing Company further east along Rockfield Road. In this case, The berm and landscaping along Rockfield Road, staff thinks it feels it needs some improvement. It's not as high for some obvious reasons. There's not enough space between the right of way and the building parking area that was provided to accommodate more and higher berms. If possible, staff would like to see it go higher, but certainly that it be amended or revised to be more symmetrical or to be less symmetrical with more undulation. In terms of both the vertical and horizontal to give it a more natural appearance and less of just a wall of dirt. And lawn, the landscaping that's proposed, while it's not as visible on this, there's a significant amount of landscaping that's in the plan that's on the inside, if you will, the parking lot side of the berm. And staff is suggesting that there be more landscaping included on the roadside of the berm and on the other side of the peak, if you will, along with the difference in the elevation, varied elevation and undulation across the length of the berm along Rockfield Road. In terms of landscaping, there is a need for additional street trees to meet the minimum requirements along both Rockfield and Gateway Crossing. Village Forester has some additional comments concerning the parking lot landscaping. Is indicating that there's no more trees required in and around the parking lot to meet the minimum requirement in the code. And he's also recommending some alternative species for the deciduous trees to further promote diversity across the site. Public Works and Engineer Department has indicated there are some technical corrections needed to the water and sewer utility plans in their April 21st review memo. And also that the proposed driveway location along Gateway Crossing is really close, too close in their opinion to the intersection of Rockfield Road, and that it should be relocated further south to align with the north driveway to Zilber 4 across the street. That would move it approximately 300 feet south of the intersection. Right now, it's generally 75 to 80 feet south of the intersection. And while it may not be an issue short-term with exiting left-turn vehicles, at some point down the road, when development is generating traffic on both sides of Rockfield, it could create an issue at the intersection, and thus the call for that driveway, the north driveway on Gateway Crossing, to be relocated further south. With that, the staff recommendation is to approve the site development and building plans for the Zilber 7 building located on Gateway Crossing, subject to a total of 10 conditions that we can read through if you see fit. I know there are representatives here for Zilber Property Group and TI Investors. I don't know if you folks have any comments you want to make at this point, or just respond to questions.
I was like reading my name into the record, so I don't want to miss that opportunity here. Chad Novice, Zilber Property Group, 710 North Plankington Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So before we respond to some of those items, I just want to compliment staff once again. This is our 7th building in this particular park, and the review and the work that we've done together has been nothing but expeditious and also very professionally handled. So just want to make that remark before we got started.
Thank you.
We'll continue to work with staff and make those adjustments and, get revised plans in and work to find a final solution for those open items.
The adjustments in regards to the driveway placement and the landscaping berming?
Yes.
Okay.
We will do our best to increase the height. I think Jeff will, when he takes a look at it, will know that we've got some limitations. What we
Mhm.
don't want to do is violate safe slopes and so forth like
Mhm.
that. So we'll get it as high as we possibly can, which may be marginal, and revisit the plantings at the
You're
same
looking
time.
more at the possibility of a series of mounds, Jeff, rather than one big flat plateau of berm?
Yeah, and in fact, the berming regulations in the code call for more undulation and serpentine-ish, horizontally and vertically.
He looks back here.
Yes, and I guess one need not go any further, much further than the Illing Company at the corner of Goldendale and Rockfield, where we required the same sort of treatment with the berms. In fact, if you recall, we had a little bit of an issue. The plan had a significant amount of undulation and landscaping, and for whatever reason, the grading contractor decided to just make it one symmetrical wall of dirt. And at the end of the day, they had to go back and redo it to match the approved plan. And what eventually turned out is exactly what was envisioned in terms of a more natural appearing berm to the extent that it can be in that sort of orientation and location.
And I do appreciate your comments about staff, but at the same time, I would also appreciate Zilber's commitment to this project and their willingness to go through with the plan as it was stated and the success of its outcome. So I appreciate that and the willingness to work together to see it succeed in the short amount of period of time that we did. I think nobody envisioned that it would be within 5 years or less. But I think that it had a plan that you committed to in the beginning and have stuck through and we see the final results of that today. So thank you for that.
Thank you as well.
Commissioners,
I will move approval of the site development building plans for Zilber 7 with the 10 conditions outlined by village staff.
Second.
motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion to approve.
I just have
Question.
Trustee Baum.
So on the elevation, there are knockout panels everywhere on this building. Why are we having so many knockout panels? What's going on?
these.
Everywhere it says KO on the elevations is a knockout panel where they can remove the wall and put in windows or doors or whatever. And I don't understand, is there a alteration to this building? Is there a plan to revise this building? Why am I seeing all these knockout panels?
We commonly design those just for future flexibility. Sometimes these buildings outlive the life of the any current occupant in them. So it's easier to design those knockouts in now, so we don't have to make major structural changes 20 years from now, perhaps, if we were to add a window or some additional glass in the future.
So the current design of the building anticipates the current proposed tenant as is.
Yes, the knockouts are just for future provisions, should they ever come to be.
Okay. The only question I had. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up? David, are you interested in seeing some revised plan if the tenant, a tenant down the road is interested in knocking out those panels or some of them?
Yes, if this is not what you intend to build and you intend to put windows in, I'd like to see the building in its final orientation. If the tenant comes through and 2 years from now wants to put the windows in, I'd like to see what they want to do 2 years from now.
You talking about the same tenant or a different tenant?
Same and different, both.
I think that
Work.
the idea is to propose the building, you can tell me if I'm wrong, as it is now, but they want the flexibility of future. I mean, and you have a prime example with the Briggs building not being with the original tenant and having the option to condition the building to accommodate what a future tenant might want for either additional windows or doorways.
Yes, And if we're approving this building with this aesthetics tonight, if somebody wants to change the aesthetics of this building anytime down the road,
Yeah,
then it should come back before the plan commission.
based on if it's a major revision.
What do we consider a major revision? We start punching holes in the wall? Is it 2 holes in the wall? Is it 10 holes in the wall? Is it?
It's usually something that's proposed to this body and a recommendation usually coming from the community development director based on what's being proposed.
Yeah, I guess I would look for some direction on that because frankly, I know it's a broad statement, but if the knockout panels are being replaced by windows, that would seem to be moving in a more aesthetically pleasing direction.
But it is going into an office scenario as opposed to a warehouse scenario, which are my parking requirements would change potentially.
Yeah, just to clear up if I wasn't clear the first time, this is the aesthetic that's proposed for the building. Again, we can't undo structural changes, you know, again, many tenants perhaps or occupants of the building down the road. There's no near-term plans or any aesthetic changes to this. And then whatever review process is appropriate, if there were to be those, we would adhere and follow them.
Yeah, and thus, if you want to change the building, bring it back before plan commission.
Yeah, I think it's just forward thinking.
Yeah, I understand that, but I want to get it on the record that if you want to alter this building, you need to bring it back before plan commission.
Yeah, I don't think.
So do you mean even if there's like one knockout that's proposed to be converted to a window on the west elevation?
That's where the question comes in. How much, at what point do we require it? 1, 10, 50, all?
I mean, the elevation drawings do present a significant number of potential knockout.
Yeah.
Know
And
where they need. I mean, they're given the option of taking that possibility now rather than the cost it if they would have to do it later. It just allows options for the building for anything future. This building's not gonna, it's gonna be here for 50 years.
yes, but the lower level knockout panels, I'm trying to get it back up on my screen. The lower level knockout panels would allow for additional overhead doors.
Sure.
Is that what is we are looking for in the future is a significant number of overhead doors on the north side of the building?
Now, I would think that if it would be a significant number of overhead doors, that would warrant to come back before this plan commission because it would change traffic patterns and the layout of the parking lot.
And that's all I'm trying to bring across is where is the criteria for these knockout panels being popped out, overhead doors being put in, and changing the fabric of the building? At what point do we bring it back in?
I would throw this out, maybe if the knockout is for the purpose of an overhead door, it comes back to the plan commission. If it's for the purpose of a window, that it just be allowed to continue it through the building permit process.
I would agree.
Should that be an additional condition to the approval?
I think it would provide staff necessary guidance.
Future down the road, it builds a history.
Yeah. So I will make a motion to amend the approval that if the knockout panels are used for overhead doors, it has to come back before plan commission.
Motion made to amend. Do we have a second? Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Was this on other buildings?
I've never seen it before.
Well, just for some clarity on my end, we're just talking about the front face of the building, not the rear face of the building that could have some additional docks. There's a limited
Yeah.
number of knockouts.
I would agree with that. I mean,
I'm more concerned about the north elevation than I am the south elevation, but on the south elevation, you don't have all that many knockout panels on there.
right.
So I'm not too concerned about the south elevation. Looks like you've got 1, 2, 3, Looks like you only got 3 potential doors on the south elevation.
Right.
So that's not a concern, but when you start putting them on the north side, facing current open space and further residential, that comes into concern.
Right. So the north, and what about the east?
Show me these.
I'm trying to find east. And north. Every time I get to the east, I lock up.
It'd be the same.
Yeah, I would say the north and east would be the elevations of concern.
Right.
Okay,
Because they're front facing. It's considered the front corners.
Right.
all right, so,
Understood, that's understood in your motion then?
yes,
Front. All right, so north and east, and that, is it okay with the second? All right, motion, further discussion on the motion to amend.
what? Further, no, nothing, no, not on this current motion.
Yeah, this is for the motion to amend.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed, motion carries. Back to the motion as amended. Further discussion. Trustee Baum.
Okay, on the elevations, I'm looking specifically at the south elevation. There is a black box. I think it's a window, but I want to confirm that. 08-05. It's called out on all those black boxes. Are those louvers or windows?
Those are windows.
Those are windows. Okay. Then I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion as amended. Mr. Shattuck, you had,
The conditions, Jeff, that you list, does that include the information you brought up about the entry off the road, the change in the landscaping?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't real clear on that, but if you say it's covered, then I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
further discussion on the motion to approve as amended. No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Next item under new business is item C, Bauer Sign and Lighting Agent for Virginia Highlands Propco LLC, property owners of Virginia Highlands Care and Rehab Center, which is located at West 173, North 10915 Bernie's Way, and Life Investors Germantown Memory Care LLC, property owner of From Tidia Assisted Living of Germantown, located at North 109 West 17525 Virginia Avenue. This is for a site review application. This is for action tonight, and we'll turn the meeting back over to Director Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Virginia Highlands, the Care and Rehab Center is teaming up with the Frontida Assisted Living community to put together a single monument sign to be located at the southwest corner of the Virginia Avenue at Division Road intersection. There is an existing very short monument sign there today that will be replaced by the sign that you see on the screen. The sign does meet our code requirements with some modification called out in the staff conditions. The sign itself is a 7 feet by 8 foot, a double-sided aluminum cabinet with acrylic faces and vinyl lettering. It's not intended to be internally illuminated, but externally illuminated, and there are some existing lights, ground-mounted lights out there that are not exactly code compliant. Those need to be shielded and incorporated into the landscaping plan. That also needs to be revised with further detail on the quantity, type, and relative location of the plantings that are proposed. Address coordinates need to be added to the base. And we're looking for an as-built survey to ensure that the sign meets the minimum 5-foot setback from the property lines along both Virginia Avenue and Division Road. The staff recommendation is to approve the sign as proposed, subject to 5 conditions.
Commissioners,
I got a question.
trustee Ball,
Director Retzloff, is it, looking at the front elevation of the sign, is it correct that there is a electrical meter socket on the left end of the sign?
Yes, that's, I believe that's currently in place.
Yet the proposed sign does not show that. The rendering of the sign does not show that. So is that meter socket being removed or is it staying?
That is a good question. I do not know the answer to that.
I am, usually these signs are fed from the power of the building. And they don't have their own meter socket. Why is this one having its own meter socket?
because it's been there a long time.
Yeah, well, and now it's being brought up for review and now I'm questioning it. If we can get rid of that meter socket, it makes the sign a lot more pleasant.
Is Bauer sign here this evening? Maybe it has to do with splitting the cost between the 2 entities. They need a meter?
You can sub-meter back at a panel.
Scott Basie, Bauer Sign, 3595 South Riverside Drive, Greenfield, Wisconsin. With regard to that on the side, that is not being used at that time.
Oh, okay.
So it's a matter of contacting the city and have them.
It's ours?
I don't know if it's ours.
No, but We Energies.
We Energies, yeah.
Right. It's a
We
matter of-
Energies, okay.
So it's a matter of We Energies. Go ahead.
Turner Ramsey, with Frontida of Germantown Memory Care, W361S2267 Scuppernong Drive, Dousman, Wisconsin.
You drove once today.
He just informed me that the lights that are down there right now,
Yes.
as far as front illumination is taking place, are solar. So if we need to have something else, no, it's Mr. McCullough. If solar works for you, get capping.
Yes, solar works if it's, we get some specifications on what the illumination levels are and that sort of thing, but I would assume that's not going to be a problem. We just need to work that out.
But you're still looking for some shielding?
Again, depends on the intensity of the light level.
Understood.
And I don't know if what's out there today is intended to be the same level for the new sign. My guess is probably not.
That definitely would not illuminate the height.
Yeah.
Had to be replaced.
So the survey that you're having brought out there to make sure that it's within the distance that's required, would that also include what's happening with the meter box?
Not necessarily, but if we're gonna remove it, it's sort of a moot point. If we just require a condition of approval that the applicant be responsible for working with We Energies to have that removed.
So does that need to be an additional condition? Condition number 6?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the sign as presented with an additional condition number 6 that the meter socket be removed. That the applicant work with We Energies to remove the meter socket.
Motion made and seconded. Is there a street light there?
I believe you can see the pole right
Would that
there in the
meter be
photograph.
there for that street light?
I don't know.
I have to call Digger's hotline anyway beforehand to find out what's happening, if that's live, dead, anything along those lines.
Sure.
So
Okay.
Nothing's gonna happen until we know
Yeah,
exactly.
till they
what's
come
going on.
out. Okay.
That's right.
All right. Motion made to amend, to add a condition and second, and any discussion on that motion? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed? Motion carries. Back to the motion as amended. Further discussion? What was the? David, do you want to restate the amendment, please?
No, there was no amendment. It was a motion with a sixth condition.
Oh, I thought we have a motion prior? Oh, okay, my fault. All right, then this is just for the motion then. adding a sixth condition.
Yes.
All right, further discussion on that motion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Next item under new business is Maxwell Hours, which is item D. At North 103, West 17082, Wild Rose Lane, a zoning permit to install a fence in a drainage easement on tonight's agenda for action. Give us more background information on this new business item. We'll turn the meeting over again to Director Retzloff.
The property owner, Maxwell Hours, is seeking approval to install a 6-foot wooden shadow box privacy fence within an existing public drainage easement on their residential lot located on Wild Rose Lane in the Country Meadows West subdivision. The location is highlighted on the screen, and the area around it is all residential.
Go back to that. Okay, that's fine. Yep. Go ahead. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. I just wanted to get an idea where it was.
Yeah, it's just east of Division, along the south side of Donjas Bay Road. As shown on this graphic, there are a couple of easements that go across the property. There's on the north side, within which the fence is proposed to be located, varies in width from 30 to 54 feet along the north property line, and it's highlighted in green, and it extends across 3 lots in that corner of the intersection there. And when you look at the area photograph, you can see the pond that's located there within that drainage easement. In addition to the green drainage easement across the top, there's also a 20-foot storm sewer easement, 10 feet across the Hours property, that's shown in blue. And I added the additional 20-foot easement that's across the street to the south. There's storm sewer in that easement that conveys water from the subdivision northerly across Wild Rose Lane, across the Hours property in the storm sewer, and over to that pond. And from my understanding is most of the water that goes to that pond is coming from the storm sewer and not overland across the drainage easement across the north side of the Hours property.
That would be, that's the only easement that goes to that retention pond? That you know of? There's no other areas of that subdivision draw into that retention pond?
I believe on the left side along Division Road to the south of the pond, those lots on the outer side also have a drainage easement across the backside.
Right, but no pipe.
No pipe that I'm aware of. Here's just a close-up of that same depiction of the lot and the easements across it. The fence that's proposed along the north property line, 168 linear feet across the entire width of the lot, and an additional 24 feet along the east or side property line of the property. The intention is not to enclose the entire lot, just to provide.
East and the north.
Yes. The fence, your typical 6-foot high wood panel shadow box, 4x4 post construction. As we've discussed with these situations in the past, section 1750 of the zoning code provides for fences and drainage easements at the discretion of the Plan Commission, with evidence that one, considering the proposed location, design, and materials of the proposed fence, the fence will not materially interfere with drainage flow within the easement. And 2, in the case of a subdivision, homeowners association consent to the encroachment, or if not a subdivision, the adjacent landowner's written consent. In this case, evidence provided in the application from the property owner, it's sort of an anecdotal observation since they've owned the property in 2018, 2019. that there's little, if any, water standing or traversing their property on the back. And the landowners on either side have signed a statement indicating they have no problems with the fence being constructed. We don't have any evidence that the Country Meadows West Homeowners Association is active anymore. So we'll rely on the sign off on the adjoining property owners in this case. As I mentioned, the pond receives stormwater from the subdivision via storm sewer along the west property line within a separate public drainage easement. There's no fence proposed in that drainage easement. As is typical, the Director of Highways, Parks, Buildings and Grounds is recommending to not approve the proposed fence in the drainage easement. That's a common recommendation that we get. But if we were inclined to approve it, he's looking for, recommending that we require the property owner be responsible for any future costs if the fence needs to be removed or maintained for some public drainage maintenance purpose. With that, the Plan Commission or the staff recommendation is to approve the zoning permit to install the wooden fence, subject to 4 conditions.
Can I see the picture again, please?
Absolutely. The aerial?
Yeah, right there.
I will make a motion to approve with the 4 conditions.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Comment,
Trustee Baum?
is the applicant in the room? Is the applicant aware
Yes.
of comment?
Sorry, yes, he's approaching the microphone.
At the
I can see that. Is the applicant aware of comment number 4? That you are responsible for removing the fence whenever we decide it needs to be removed?
Yes.
Okay. As long as you're aware of it, I'm fine with it.
Probably other questions.
My question is to Jeff. Jeff, is this in line with similar things that we've approved in the past? I don't see a difference in it, but I just wondered what you thought.
It's closer to a retention pond than what we've approved in the past.
Yeah, it is. And maybe you can elaborate more on your observations of what's going on in your backyard.
So we do have some water sitting on the west end, but the north end is completely grassed and dry. And that's our straightest, flattest area because we have 2 small kids. And Division being it, or not Division, Don just being a little bit more of a main road. We do want sort of a division between the sidewalk and the street from our house. And you can clearly see the street and sidewalk straight out of our kitchen window and that sense. So that's the purpose for wanting the fence. But water wise, even with all those heavy rains, the water only got as at most a couple inches deep because the main pond is to the west of us. And then it just kind of rises slightly with the heavy rains. But we wouldn't be adjusting anything with actual water or anything. We just want the fence up along the top.
Isn't there a natural tree line there and does it dip down?
So,
Kind of on the, I'm going to say the northwest corner?
so the northwest is, so right now it's all our own horribleness right now. So that's what we've been actually working on the past couple of years is trying to pull out a lot of the overgrown stuff that isn't actually like true nice plant life. And as we've been doing that, we've noticed that we clearly see the street. And that's why we went forward with making the application for this. Because we're actually having a landscaper come in and actually help us put up a little bit more and clean up a lot of that. But our actual property on the east end, there's like nothing there. We've got 2 trees, 2 smaller trees, and then sidewalk. Because it's grassed down on the east end.
How close is that fence to that very tall tree that's there? That's been there like for 200 years?
The big tree in my neighbor's yard? That one?
Yeah. How close do you come to that?
So his tree is actually way over here. That's where my property line would be. So you can see the 2 different kinds of grass kind of. It's grass perfectly, but
And very short.
yeah. But it would be a good distance from the end because we're not actually, his tree is further south of where this utility box is, and we're not even going that far.
So your plan is to put just the fence on the east and the north side?
this stretch and then along the back. And the reason we want this little stretch here is, like I said, because this is where the kids play, if it's grass.
Uh-huh.
That way it boxes them in a little bit. And my neighbor, see, has several plans already and stuff. This way, so we're not further.
Is it going into the front yard?
No, it's the fence.
No.
That's stopped right there. It's just 24 feet, so 100, about 170 feet along the back. And then 24 feet this way, which doesn't even make it to there, so that's about 30 feet.
So how close is it to that sidewalk then?
Would be your, whatever your requirement, I think was 2 feet.
2 feet off the property line. And it's close, relatively close to the sidewalk.
Okay.
I'm okay.
I'm gonna go to, Tony Tarantino.
I just
Mr.
have a couple
Tarantino.
questions. As far as the only part that bothers me about it is the hook, because that's the only part that's actually gonna impede the water flow on the east side. And I know you're saying it's not ponding or flowing through there now, but if you block it, it will. And then it's gotta go somewhere. So that part, I understand why you want it, but I think that could probably be done with plants. And then my next thing on the back, being so close to the sidewalk, is there any concern, like when the village plows the city sidewalks with their machines and we blow a panel of this fence out?
So
Then how does that work? Because that's right on there.
No, I mean, the plow, I think, is a V plow, so it goes on both sides.
So that's what I'm saying. If it's, snow hits the fence, leading me to my third question, it doesn't seem that a fence has gone up in Germantown in like the past 2 years that's still standing. Is there a permit process on it? Is there like inspections on the footings, or is it just put it up and hope it works?
No, there's a fence permit. If you're referring to the one on Division Road, we did have to chase down the property owner and
Is it inspected like you would inspect a deck footing to make sure it's gonna stand?
footings and cement on the posts, or can they just put it in sand and gravel?
'Cause it ends up looking pretty goofy when it's just leaning. I'm not saying this to like come after you. It's just
there's no
on display.
code requirement for the use of concrete.
they do plan on using concrete footing, so to stabilize it.
The one on Division, yes, who had the prop bars up to keep it from blowing over on the,
I wish you could bring it in some, rather than stand it right against the sidewalk. Or like you said, do it with plants. Because you basically are changing the aesthetics of that neighborhood in that area. I mean, dramatically you are, because there's no other fence there. The closest one that has a fence, would be along, Division. And they've just recently changed it from that white fence to more of a aluminum, dark aluminum. They brought it in, but it's more inside the property line and not sitting right on the edge.
I think the original subdivision developer constructed sections of split rail fence around the perimeter, some of which are still in existence.
Some
In
are,
fact, I think
yeah.
So my property had that when I moved in, but it was falling apart.
Mhm.
So we just kept the end post on just to kind of remember where our property line was.
Yeah, and beyond what the developer installed, there was no specific prohibition in the old deed restrictions, nor is there one in the zoning code that prohibits the fences from being installed. So it's,
That's true. And it was, I think it was at that time left to, what the covenants and and if there would have been an HOA board.
right, and the only restriction that really would have come into play was the requirement that any improvement be approved by the HOA. And now that there is no HOA and no enforcement of whatever policy there might have been all those years ago with regard to fences,
Because I think there's only one other 6-foot fence. There's one on Division in my neighborhood at Wild Rose and Bittersweet. There's a 6-foot white fence.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, but most of them are also, they're more inside the property line than right against the walkway. So it gives you it gets the reminder of what you see on Pilgrim as you head towards county line, where you have fence, all along that line. So it starts to build that. I do have I do have some concern as you get closer to the retention pond, because I know it gets wet. And there was at one time, someone built a makeshift bridge down there. Is that still down there?
I think it is.
Because it was built out of pallets. And the only reason I'm familiar with it is this is where I live. And it's not, I'm not questioning it because of where I live. It's just, I'm more worried about the water, in that one corner, especially in the northwest corner.
So that's actually in my neighbor's property, that bridge was. So I don't actually extend that far.
Okay.
There,
I understand why you want the fence with your children and protection of how close it is. I mean, Donjes Bay is, people drive fast,
Yeah,
once they come off of Division Road, so I totally understand it. I only have an issue as we get closer to that retention pond. I could see a corner section and more with planting. But you do have a right to stretch that fence all the way down.
Another thing I kind of want to make a point. So the water itself only runs, like it's down at way at the bottom. So literally it's right at the edge of the 30-foot water easement is where the actual water is at that very end. So it's not actually, it doesn't, it's not all in that property. It's literally runs right here, the big roughly. So the actual fence itself isn't anywhere near where any city water sits.
Can I see where that pipe is again, Jeff? Oh, so you're on top of the pipe.
Yeah.
If it ever needs to be replaced, it will dig up your fence.
Oh, I get that.
And you'd have to replace it. And we're going on 30 years. I think it was started in 94, 95.
I believe the house was built in 95.
Yeah. So any maintenance that would have to be done on that easement would require the removal of your fence if they'd have to replace that pipe, because it is the main storm sewer that feeds that pond, one of the main ones.
So one of the other, because we did look into doing trees, but then if we had to do that work anyways, we'd have to remove the trees, or the trees would be taken down as well. So that's why we thought the easier suggestion, because the fence is easier to take down however many sections you need to take down and be able to place it back up instead of affecting actual like large growth wildlife or plant life.
And there's no severe pitch on that northwest corner. Doesn't it drop down
So
somewhat
there is a hill,
dramatically?
there is a hill. So the sidewalk is level with my house.
Right.
And then it goes downhill, and so downhill here, and then flat, and then uphill slightly here.
Right. And your kids go down into that area, into that marshy,
So this is all grass, it's not even wet.
right there, yep.
So this is the main, it's the flattest backyard aspect of our yard, so that's where they tend to spend most of their time. Well, a 2.5-year-old and 8-month-old or 4-month-old, so.
Yeah, that's where they can actually walk without falling down.
And, because we're actually looking at taking back a little bit of this and grassing a little bit more with the landscaper, which this isn't part of the water easement, this side. So like I said, 3 feet this way. We did want to grass a little bit more of that. That's.
Is the fence needed more for security or for privacy?
Both, honestly. It's because like I said, the sidewalk is straight out our like kitchen window or dining room slider. Like the sidewalk, because it's level with the house, you pretty much make eye contact when you're sitting on your back patio with people, as well as, like I said, the kids go up and down that way, and my 2-year-old is a runner. So it's nice to be able to confine them a little bit.
I think one of the reasons we haven't seen many fences in that subdivision is because of the vegetation is mature and.
It's pretty heavy in there, yeah. I bet it was also pretty thick with a lot of stuff, a lot of brush, a lot of cattails that have been knocked down and stomped down over the years.
Because like I said, we've been working on it well, me and my wife both work full-time, and we have 2 small kids now, so we've lost a lot of our ability to work on it, but over the years, because I've talked to a couple of different landscapers, and then COVID hit and everybody was just backed up. So we've been just doing it ourselves. But a lot of it, because talking to landscapers, they said there are some stuff that they intentionally planted back there, but it's just become so overgrown over the past, even before we got there, it was all overgrown. And now that we've kind of cleared it out, now it's just growing weeds until we actually get a permanent solution, which we don't want to get the landscaper coming in doing anything until we are confirmed whether or not we'd be able to build a fence, because that would change the,
So that back half is really not an easement?
which,
The back along the sidewalk, that fence?
Everything in green is within an easement.
it's all part of it. It's just, like I said, this is all, this entire corner back here, this is the thickest vegetation